Yes, yes, the evil god replied. Once pointed in the right direction, Duan Yun had already dragged the couple inside. Rather than a cellar, it was more like the secret chamber of the Axe Gang. The lavish decor inside far surpassed that of the cellar Duan Yun had been tinkering with at Yuju Manor. With a click, the cellar door closed again. And by that time, the door was already crawling with people. Though they couldn't see, they could listen. Transformation of heroic spirit. From the sound of it, an extremely evil transformation, especially targeting the charming Lady Hualing, and in the cellar, right before her husband, the evil god's eyes. For a moment, their minds must have been filled with countless imagined scenarios. Yes, even if they couldn't see, just hearing sounds made it worthwhile, even worth dying for. By this time, the evil god and Lady Hualing had been pulled into the cellar, trembling violently, because they were just like the onlookers outside. What kind of transformation of heroic spirit? It sounded vile and terrifying. The two of them were at a loss. Were they to be transformed into something more terrifying than Star Fury? Rumors of old demon Duan's unspeakable, horrific, and sinister ways emerged in their minds. Previously, the couple always believed they were not inferior to old demon Duan, even thinking themselves slightly superior because 1 + 1 was greater than 2, so they scoffed at those preposterous rumors. Yet, at this moment, as victims witnessing old demon Duan's methods, the rumors could only bring dread. Fallen, incontinent, mindless, or even growing countless tentacles, all these ideas floated through their minds. At that moment, Duan Yun's hand rested on Hua Ling's head. Both the evil god and Hua Ling felt shrouded in immense fear. The next moment, Hua Ling and the evil god shivered as Hua Ling let out a soft moan. At the same time, the onlookers leaning against the cellar door trembled too. The plot begins now. Soon, the gentle moans continued. Duan Yun, puzzled, lifted his hand, saying, "Madam, I haven't even started." Hua Ling nervously replied, "I'm just rather sensitive." Yes, my wife is naturally sensitive, and she was once selected as one of the top 10 exotic bodies in Yunyu, the evil god quickly stated. What nonsense is this? Duan Yun pressed his hand, and the terrifying suction had already begun. Hua Ling's features instantly blurred. Unlike the typical Biming divine skills blur, this time it was a vortex. He intended to cleanse this sinful person's body and soul with his boundless heroic chi. This was a sudden idea of Duan Yun. Previously, when hero storyteller and Jade Sword sect young seedlings emerged, it was often an unintended result after extermination. This time, he planned to personally transform and nurture heroic spirit seedlings. This was akin to recreating a person, thus a bit nerve-wracking too. Hua Ling's true chi was drawn into his palm, allowing Duan Yun to feel a scorching sensation. For someone with such high-level true chi, it was rather tasty for him. Due to Duan Yun's earlier warning, Hua Ling bit down, restraining from making any sound. But as the true chi was absorbed, she finally couldn't withstand it, letting out a moan. Suddenly, her voice heightened sharply. This was because Duan Yun not only absorbed her true chi but also infused spinning heroic chi into her mind. This was a simultaneous process of intake and output, a dual stimulation. While absorbing and releasing, Duan Yun also experienced an intense thrill. Absorbing equaled removing the wickedness within. Releasing equaled infusing righteous heroic chi, akin to cleansing a room, removing filth while filling it with purity, creating an exhilarating sensation. He couldn't help but increase its intensity. Ah! Ah! Under intense stimulation, Hua Ling cried out. She felt herself being filled with something white. Though unseen, she somehow knew it was white and very warm. In his excitement, Duan Yun shouted to the evil god beside him, "Watch closely! This is how your wife is transformed by heroic chi." With his shout, both Duan Yun and Hua Ling quivered, connected in the sea of consciousness. Many of Hua Ling's memories surfaced in Duan Yun's consciousness, shattered and dissipated. This was Duan Yun's first meticulous heroic spirit transformation, with extraordinary wisdom constantly guiding him forward. To sum it up in 4 characters, Cleanse and rebirth. Purging the evil. A new heroic chi arises. Hualing and Duanyun were connected, their bodies filled with heroic chi while their minds were enveloped by heroism. This was a total transformation. In the evil god's eyes, winds rose in the luxuriously decorated cellar, storms swirled, and even lightning crackled. His wife seemed filled with something, trembling ceaselessly, her eyes turning snow-white as if white light beamed from them. "I want to be a hero," suddenly Hualing shouted. Just those 5 words, lacking a thousandth of the drama imagined by the onlookers. Yet at this moment, it sent shivers down everyone's spine, cold from fear. It was terror. These 5 words seemed to hold a mystical power, as if a terrifying species was birthed within the cellar, leaving them trembling. Those with weak kidneys were scared senseless, wetting themselves from fright. The same went for the evil god. "Wife, what happened? What is this?" "Evil god. I want to be a hero. If you won't be a hero with me, I'll just sell myself to the world, including beggars, except you can't have me." The evil god was hit like a hammer, turning green with shock. "No, please. Wife, please no." He had said before, "My wife can be useful," but only to save her life. In truth, their love was genuine and pure. However, as Lady Hualing sincerely uttered those words, the evil god was dumbstruck. Duanyun said, "Don't worry, he'll become a hero too." The next moment, he raised his right hand, and the evil god was also drawn over. The same occurred to the evil god. He opened his mouth, shouting, "I want to be a hero." Hualing followed, shouting, "I want to be a hero." Then together, the couple shouted, "I want to be a hero." Duanyun asked, "How do you plan to be heroes?" Kuin outside. Kuin is immense evil, loves patience, afraid to be enemies with heroes. "Kill first," the evil god shouted. Then Lady Hualing shouted, "After killing, transform. Go to Hero Town. Study hard." Ling Shui can also be Hero Town. Hearing their declarations made Duanyun smile contently. This heroic spirit transformation needed to change their bodies and minds, consuming great energy. Due to its connection to consciousness and memory, even he had to be cautious, lest he be mentally disturbed and driven mad. Truth be told, such transformations could only be conducted twice in a period of time. Fortunately, the results were good. He wasn't mad, remained sane, and these two transformed from great villains to normalcy. No, they even had a high heroic spirit awareness. That was exactly what he was pleased to see. Duanyun was very satisfied with the results, feeling that even the dim cellar was filled with the light of heroic chi, bright and warm beyond measure. While it was bright and warm to him, to others it was terrifying as the abyss hell. What kind of method could make Hualing and the evil god exclaim such things? "Oh, Hualing, evil god." Yet they were shouting, "I want to be a hero. Transform. Go to Hero Town. Study hard." For the onlookers, the event was horrifying to the extreme, even more terrifying than encountering a ghost. Someone yelled, "Ghosts!" and the onlookers couldn't hold it anymore, screaming as they scattered. Even the surviving cattle seemed to sense something unclean, mooing like crying "ghosts," while frantically fleeing. Though little Een felt immense fear creeping into her heart, she didn't escape. Then, she heard a creak, and the cellar door was lifted, with Duanyun's voice emanating. "What ghost nonsense? Haven't you seen such pure heroes?" After that, little Een saw Duanyun and the other two. Her eyes subconsciously squinted slightly, because she felt as if she saw the light. The 3 of them were emitting a white glow. The fire spirit evil god and Chai Kuan have a close relationship. Though the fire spirit evil god is loving, due to the fire spirit being a natural artifact, they have never had children. But Chai Kuan, who is excellent at enduring silently and truly talented with good looks, was adopted by them as their son ever since their time at the Netherworld Mountain Villa. In name, he is an adopted son, but they have always treated him as their own. So, after leaving the Netherworld Mountain Villa, they also brought Chai Kuan here. These times in Lingshui City could be said to be the happiest for this family of three. One could only say the couple is loving, the mother is kind, and the son filial. Yet at this moment, the fire spirit evil god emerged from the cellar and resolutely decided to do something. And that was to act with righteousness against family. Now, both have been overwhelmingly filled with heroic spirit and only think of being heroes. Anyone who dares to block their heroic path, whether son, father, mother, or grandmother, must be killed. Fire spirit and evil god looked at Duan Yun with shining eyes and said, "Young hero Duan, we are leaving. We want to be heroes. We want to be heroes," the couple said in unison. "Okay." Duan Yun nodded, and the fire spirit evil god leaped and disappeared from the dilapidated bright gambling house. Duan Yun saw this and couldn't help but sigh with contentment. "I am not alone in my path." Littleine watched this and nervously asked, "You didn't kill them. What are they up to?" Duan Yun pondered and said, "They should be off to kill the escaping Axe Gang leader." Littleine realized and fearfully said, "Can the Tao Heart Demon seed reach such a level?" Upon hearing, Duan Yun angrily retorted, "What Tao Heart Demon seed? They are changed by my heroic spirit, transformed by heroic spirit." Littleine couldn't help but picture herself affected by this Tao Heart Demon seed, recognizing the thief as father and fighting with her sisters. "No, really no." Littleine looked at Duan Yun, pleading, "Please don't do that to me." Duan Yun said, "You're not ready for a transformation. This chance for heroic spirit transformation is rare and precious. This heroic spirit transformation involves a person's essence, energy, and spirit. Even he must be cautious, or he risks backlash. For instance, he still has the image of fire spirit selecting artifacts in his mind, unable to shake it off quickly. With too many inserted memories like this, he fears becoming insane. Thus, such thorough heroic spirit transformation must be sparingly used, needing a good period of adjustment before use. Knowing old Demon Duan wouldn't condition him with a Tao Heart Demon seed for now, Littleine secretly breathed a sigh of relief and showed a well-behaved expression. At night, Duan Yun sat cross-legged on the inn's bed. After one fight and two washes, two heroic spirit transformations, he was somewhat tired. But he still didn't rest. Instead, practicing Jade Sword distant. Outside was a heavy rain, and a faint scent of medicine wafted into his nose. Clearly, the great medicine wasn't in the city, but in the suburbs. This scent should be quite apparent, yet because of the rain, it lingered somewhat vaguely on Duan Yun's nose. If he rushed out in the rain now, he couldn't guarantee he'd find the right place. So Duan Yun soon let it go. He went outside the room to give some instructions. Soon, an attendant brought up some tea and snacks. On a rainy night, in a foreign city, after a bout of fighting, a cup of tea was most fitting. The young hero was busy, but needed to relax sometimes. Humans aren't non-stop machines. Even if he had extraordinary wisdom, he too needed rest. Outside, the rain poured. One must say, Lingshui City was indeed quite prosperous. When nighttime falls, the hometown Lishui City becomes near silent, sparse with lights. Yet, in Lingshui City at this hour, despite the torrential rain, lights could still be seen in the rain curtain. Thinking such a city would gradually become the land of young heroes, Duan Yun felt hopeful for the future. This world may be bad, but it can still be saved. The lights on a rainy night always give a cozy feeling, like someone waiting for you. Yes, in the darkest alley, as long as there's a light left, you can always find warmth there. Even if it's the first time you'll meet the person waiting. Just remember to pay afterward. This was Martial World's advice Morong brothers gave to Duan Yun. He prides himself as a charming playboy, always outshining Duan Yun in this regard. Duan Yun once asked, "Then you must have a wonderful night." Morong brothers replied, "Of course. Are you still a virgin then?" Duan Yun asked. "How could I be? Don't lie, careful, or I'll ask personally." At this point, Morong brothers would lower their proud heads and say, "Yes." Even Shadow Ing would curiously inquire, "Then you're wasting silver?" Morong brothers usually start mumbling things like, enjoy playing clean, rich stuff gets tiresome. Heart to heart is more challenging than body to body, causing them to laugh heartily. Remembering such matters on a rainy night, Duan-Yun couldn't help but laugh and felt a sense of warmth. This sense of warmth also carried a bit of loneliness. Morong brothers were still in Qinghe City. Having been away for so long, he still missed them. Missing the brothers, several girls below, his pets. No matter how fragrant it is outside, it can't compare to the home of young hero. Seeing Duan-Yun sipping tea and smiling, Littleine puzzledly asked, "Are you daydreaming?" Duan-Yun raised an eyebrow. Littleine quickly stopped her playful manner, saying seriously, "You're thinking of someone you like." "You can tell," Duan-Yun said. "When people think of someone they like, that joy is hard to hide." On such a rainy day, even Littleine, who had just emerged, became sentimental and poetic. She poured herself a cup of tea, sat down, and began to drink. Watching the rain, Littleine couldn't help but ask, "What is the woman you like?" Perhaps such a night indeed makes one recall someone. Duan-Yun contemplated. "Below." Littleine was flabbergasted. "Why did you suddenly say this to me?" Duan-Yun was puzzled. "What did I say?" "No need to cover up. A cover-up is a hint, and a hint is a clear indication." Duan-Yun. Littleine immediately put on a sincere demeanor. "Look, should I nod or not?" "Scram. You're a mount. Nodding means you're asking for a whipping." Littleine squatted beside him, looking aggrieved. Yet she also felt somewhat spirited. She, Littleine, was determined to see just what the Star Fury witches of old Demon Duan were like. No matter if it's a woman, could I, Littleine, be worse than others? In the morning, Duan-Yun woke up. The strong tea from last night hadn't stopped him from sleeping soundly. It could only be said that after waking up, his fatigue had disappeared, and he was full of energy. As Littleine brushed her teeth, she looked at his spirited state, momentarily captivated. If fate demanded she die at the hands of this old demon, at least he was good-looking. Even if he intended to harm her, she could still accept it. At least he's good-looking. The rain had stopped. Duan-Yun began to practice Jade Sword, already distinctly smelling the scent of medicine. Indeed, once he's done here, he should go find Brother Morong and Shining. Young hero wandering alone outside, still quite Mrs. Greensaber young hero and the ladies. After a casual breakfast of porridge and buns, Duan-Yun and Littleine set out. In the morning, Lingshui City was fairly quiet, with only 1/10 of the people compared to yesterday evening. Duan-Yun confidently deduced that people here were lazy and liked to sleep in. But what's the reality? Last night he defeated the fire spirit evil god. Whatever he did in their key cellar spread widely, perhaps shameful or terrifying. All in all, old demon Duan arrived. Fire spirit evil god was defeated. Axe gang scattered. A young hero, who immediately took down the local thugs, was even scarier than a life-taking ghost. Whether adults, children, or elderly, whether brave or timid martial world guests, none dared to go out. On this street, apart from those forced to make a living, who dared to venture out? When Ghost Gate opens and King Yen patrols the street, do you dare to go out? This is why Lingshui City is lazy. Duan-Yun never thought he had such power to cause citywide laziness. Leaving Lingshui City, the flowing river split in two. The scent of medicine in his breath wafted from the right. The further he walked along the river, the stronger the medicinal scent became. For a moment, Duan-Yun felt an impulse, an urge to gather this medicine, stew it in a pot, and drink it heartily. Soon, he steadied his mind, silently exclaiming, "Such an evil skill to incite such desire." Indeed, the medicinal scent created appetite, even though Duan-Yun knew ahead that the opponent was human. However, as Duan-Yun breathed, the previously absorbed moonlight true energy circulated within him, fiercely taming that little true chi, and the impulse faded. It could only be said that the true chi produced by Hua Wu's Jade Sword True Understanding was indeed strange, inciting the urge to swallow great medicine. Up ahead was a small village. Unlike the lazy people of Lingshui City, Farmers here were already working in the fields. Duan Yun and Little Een chose a quieter path to proceed forward, not disturbing the villagers. Because upon arriving here, he almost confirmed the great medicine was in the village. He planned to sneak into the village and secretly check the situation of this great medicine. Most of the village consisted of thatched houses, with only one courtyard made of tile, probably the village chief's home. Soon, Duan Yun and Little Een lightly jumped onto a thatched roof. The morning fog lingered, and a youth was practicing swordsmanship. Watching the youth's sword practice stance, Duan Yun felt it was incredibly familiar. Isn't this Jade's sword finger? The youth must have practiced numerous times. His fingers stretched and retracted extremely skillfully. His fingers responded, ejecting streams of white sword chi. But unlike Duan Yun's sword chi finger, when this sword chi hit a wall, it only stirred up a bit of dust. Clearly, the youth held a sub-book, unable to practice anything powerful. At this point, Duan Yun performed Jade's sword remote, and the medicinal scent became particularly strong. At this moment, he could even vaguely discern that this great medicine had been cultivated for 2 years. Using mother text Jade's sword true understanding terminology, this great medicine hastened for almost 5 years, and can be considered rather old. Unlike ginseng, which benefits from age, this great medicine resembles cabbage. Once aged becomes tough and loses taste as well as efficacy. If Hua Wen and Hua Wu planted it, they must have forgotten to harvest after mastering the feminine version of Jade's sword true understanding. Or they were too busy being villains to care. Even though these brothers were killed and removed from the register, Duan Yun felt resentful. Daring to deceive and betray young hero, they died far too easily. If he had resurrection powers, he'd revive them just to kill them again. Watching the youth sweat while practicing swordsmanship, Duan Yun had to admire his perseverance. 2 years. After practicing for 2 years and barely flicking off some dust, yet continuing to practice, doesn't he suspect his cultivation technique or talents have issues? Hey, confidence is fine, but blind confidence wastes time. Ah! 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 Suddenly, the youth erupted in a cry. May, though you've remarried thrice with 6 children, I still can't have you. Is it because I'm unworthy? You said you hate farming. So I avoided farming. Even if my mother died from exhaustion half a year ago, I have no regrets. Because if I master this, by mastering swordsmanship, I'll come marry you. I'd even be your dog willingly. Farmers lick you, you dislike it. Sword immortal licks you, will you be willing? Please be willing. I am that 1 in a million sword immortal within your heart. Jade's sword finger. Shoot! 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 The youth shouted. For a moment, the youth appeared exuberant and impassioned. But Duan Yun was left with face pains. Darn, you're so passionate, so persistent, so confident, with such great tenacity. All just to be a bootlicker? Your mother died from exhaustion, but you're not regretting it. Seems it wasn't you who died. Huh? Little Een watched and couldn't help but mutter. Aren't you going to help him? Help him with what? I see he's earnest in practicing swordsmanship. Death in practice counts. Without another word, Duan Yun left. Such bootlickers, if they truly succeed, it's a disgrace to those who practice swordsmanship. Swords are regarded as noble weapons, carrying their own aura. However, why are there so many cowards and bootlickers in the martial world? Yes, upon reflection, this world holds quite a few experts who are cowards and bootlickers. Thinking of them, Duan Yun recalled those buying blood watermelon on the city outskirts. They fervently licked those frost blood pavilion women afflicted with the contagion. Waking up early to see his first great medicine with delight, and now a stomach full of fury due to this coward. He decided to vent his anger. He set on troubling frost blood pavilion. If he confirms those women are spreading the disease or committing heinous acts, he will kill them, preferably in front of that group of cowards. Thrashing evil women pleases the young hero. Watching cowards in agony pleases him even more. Young hero boxer, commence. This is the first time Duan Yun has come to see the great medicine. Early in the morning, bubbling with enthusiasm, he rushed over, full of expectation, especially after seeing the other party so diligently for almost 2 years. He thought they were still someone with firm resolve. Who would have thought they turned out to be a coward and a lickspittle, training the sword so hard and persistently, all just to please a woman, even to the point of exhausting his own mother. Young hero Duan has always been very cultured and patient, but this time he couldn't help but get angry. This young hero is truly angry. This Lingshui city, why are there so many cowards and lickspittles? He couldn't help but recall the gatherers of blood melons, a group of cowards and lickspittles. Thus, young hero Duan decided to let the cowards and lickspittles feel pain, and those cowards and lickspittles are most pained by that whom they cherished and adored, while others disregard them, focusing only on humiliating and defeating the fairy they idolize. So, Duan Yun turned to the page about the Frost Blood Pavilion fairies. Fist Hero activate. Yesterday he took care of the Axe Gang. Today he was going to probe the depths of the Frost Blood Pavilion. If these women were truly as wicked as he imagined, he wouldn't mind showing them what is the future land of young heroes. Best to defeat them right in front of those coward and lickspittle. Duan Yun decided to act immediately. Little Een could even feel how urgent he was since she could clearly sense the young hero accelerating on her. Where are you going? Where are we heading? Little Een, sensing Duan Yun's urgency, followed by quickening her pace. Frost Blood Pavilion. Duan Yun replied. Little Een looked puzzled. But I don't know the way. Why don't you? Duan Yun queried. Because it's my first time here, you know? Little Een questioned back. I don't know either. Oh, what oh? As a mount, you actually don't know the way. Little Een, let this young hero see where your limits are. I will go ask for directions. I'm going to ask. With that, Little Een instantly turned into a gust of wind, heading off to ask for directions. It must be said that being captured by the old demon to act as a mount is truly difficult, constantly pushing your limits at the drop of a hat. But under such pressure, Little Yin's mind and body received quite the enhancement. Her problem-solving skills had become notably efficient. Found the way. The Frost Blood Pavilion, with bamboo forests and blooming flowers intertwined, formed a tranquil and beautiful place. Located 50 miles west of Lingshui City in Flower Valley, being the territory of Frost Blood Fairies, it has always been a forbidden land for ordinary people, rarely visited. Yet today, Frost Blood Pavilion was livelier than usual, with many outsiders as well. It was because of the biennial Frost Blood Festival at Frost Blood Pavilion. The so-called Frost Blood Festival is where Frost Blood Fairies grant grace, inviting those who underwent transformation after eating blood watermelon to a gathering. This transformation, as Duan Yun referred to, was a disease, an infectious one at that, but in the eyes of the melon eaters it was a grand blessing. Think about it, if it wasn't for falling ill, how would these ordinary people have the opportunity to come to the fairies' place? 89 people with willow leaf-shaped marks on their bodies. Amongst them 83 were men. They were invited into Frost Blood Pavilion, where they saw blooming flowers and well-trimmed trees, pavilions and towers, looking much like the immortal realm, particularly when occasionally seeing fairies clad in gauzy clothes drifting amidst, made their hearts drunk. Turns out what the melon vendor said was true, eating melon changes fate. They could even breathe the same air as Frost Blood Pavilion's fairies. Some even claimed they could smell the fragrance wafting down from above. Whether it was selling pots and pans or selling parents' burial savings for melons, as long as there was this moment, it was worth it. Several men even cried humbly, because they found the feet fragrance of fairies too special, urging tears to flow. The group was ushered into the main hall. In the main hall, a number of prayer rugs were arranged. Melon eaters took their seats one by one. Moments later, a burst of astonishment rang out, because above the main hall 5 fairies floated by. They each had a delicate strand of silk, which was hard to see, making them appear to be riding the wind, stepping like lotus blooms. Accompanying the 5 fairies floating in were watermelons. Fairies scattered melons. Round watermelons, infused with fairies' unique true chi, floated down from the sky, gently landing in the hands of these fortunate melon eaters. After the fairies scattered the melons, the 5 fairies had lightly descended above the main hall. The leading fairy was clad in blood robes, with a willow leaf-shaped red mark on the right side of her face, appearing rather striking. The melon eaters in attendance looked at the willow leaf-like mark, unable to restrain their excitement. Because the marks on their bodies, especially those sprouting in their groin area, were just like the ones on the fairy's face. This could be considered the same source as the fairies. The blood robe fairy waved her hand and said, "Frost Blood Pavilion is renowned in the martial world for melons. These blood melons are newly produced, and we hope everyone will accept them graciously." At this, the crowd was as if receiving treasures. Some couldn't help but exclaim, "No wonder these melons are still warm, emitting waves of fragrance." Thinking of the fairy stepping on these melons not long ago, using a secret technique to infuse blood into them, and then arriving in their hands, this group couldn't help but hum softly. Everything felt like a dream. They were indeed very lucky. While scratching the itchy willow leaf marks on their bodies, the group exclaimed. At this moment, the blood robe fairy sighed. "Every year, Frost Blood Pavilion spreads thousands of blood melons outside. Yet only those of you are extremely lucky, gaining the Frost Blood Mark. Those who possess the Frost Blood Mark have a celestial fate and the opportunity to cultivate the great path with us." Upon hearing this, the eyes of a group of lucky bystanders lit up with excitement. Cultivate celestial fate with the fairy? Is this something people like them could possess? The blood robe fairy introduced, "The Frost Blood Mark is a sign of celestial fate, and to cultivate the great path with us, to become immortal, one must do the most important thing." No one spoke. Everyone listened intently, afraid to miss anything, because this was related to cultivating with the fairy. That is to spread the Frost Blood Mark. To spread it, there must be love, genuine connection between men and women, or between men and men. In particular, in our Yun and Yu states, it is easier to spread celestial fate between men. Starting today and culminating at this time next year, whoever spreads the celestial fate among the top 3 will receive generous gifts. To begin with, I am one of the gifts. As soon as these words were spoken, the crowd went wild. What fortune that would be to receive such grand gifts. In an instant, the only thought in everyone's mind was to spread, spread, spread. They must spread the celestial fate. The effect is even better between men. It is our duty. After returning, they plan to find their best male friends to pass on the celestial fate to them, considering it a blessing to help their friends. At this time, a few women anxiously asked, "Is it easier for men, but can women do it too?" The fairy above patiently explained, "As long as it's deep enough, it's equally easy to spread among women." Hearing this, the women started to tug on their willow marks with excitement. Who says women are inferior to men? We women are even stronger. Watermelons. 3 ox carts full of watermelons, brimming to the top. The watermelon seller Sunlay was very satisfied with this year's harvest, only saying that the business of blood watermelons gets better each year, although all the silver he earned had to be handed over to the fairies. Thinking about the heavy responsibility the fairies entrusted him with made Sunlay swell with pride. These 4 carts of watermelons were to be sent to the Frost Blood Pavilion. The Frost Blood Festival wouldn't be complete without blood watermelons. Thinking about seeing the fairy's beauty once again and even chatting a bit, Sunlay felt his watermelon knife tucked at his waist grow warm. The ox cart traveled through the bamboo forest, the flowers on the ground vibrant and bright. But Sunlay's mind was only on the fairies, willing to sacrifice anything, even the life of his own son, just to deliver the watermelons in perfect condition. So he wasn't in the mood to enjoy the scenery. Donkey. Although Duan Yun wasn't sure why they called the ox cart a donkey, it had stopped by now. Seeing the fairy, Sunlay hastily got off the cart, greeted her with admiration, feeling extremely blessed. Even though this fairy was merely a kitchen helper with pockmarks on her face, who looked like a village auntie outside, it didn't affect Sun Lei's respect and admiration for her. As long as they were part of the Frost Blood Pavilion, they were fairies. Ahead, there were sounds of bustling commotion. Duan Yun and Little Een lay atop the watermelons, exchanging a glance, hinting clearly that the noisy place ahead must be the location of that so-called Frost Blood Festival. By this time, Sun Lei had eagerly come over to move the watermelons. As he was about to lift them, he suddenly noticed the two of them and froze. How are you here? Sun Lei remembered Duan Yun and Little Een vividly. They were the rare outsiders who disrespected the fairy blood melon. Little Een was the first to jump down from the melons, saying, "It's strange if the likes of a young hero and a heroine aren't in a place like this." "What young hero and heroine? You audacious outsiders! How dare you intrude into the martial world's immortal realm of Frost Blood Pavilion?" Even though he was an outsourced melon farmer, Sun Lei still had a strong sense of ownership and couldn't help but question them. At this time, the kitchen helper fairy glanced over with a cold gaze and said, "In the martial world, there are always reckless people wanting to see our world. They manage to ride in on your cart, seemingly quite clever." With that, the old kitchen helper fairy couldn't help but look towards Duan Yun, her eyes glowing brightly. The fairies of the Frost Blood Pavilion were not above worldly desires. On the contrary, as they often stayed within the pavilion, some were quite lustful. But their desires had specific targets. For those unattractive, they could only stomach looking at them for a bit while those people spread the frost blood willow marks. But for someone as handsome as Duan Yun, that was different. Saying this, the old kitchen helper fairy approached, eyes gleaming, and said to Duan Yun, "You came here just to meet me?" Before she could finish her sentence, she suddenly doubled over, half kneeling on the ground. This was due to Duan Yun unexpectedly giving her a knee strike. "At least wash your hands before cooking. If you're this unhygienic, you get negative points from this young hero." As soon as he said this, Duan Yun delivered an elbow strike to the nape, sending the old kitchen helper flying and knocking her out cold. Seeing Duan Yun's swift actions, Sun Lei was terrified but instinctively drew out the watermelon knife. This was a rare opportunity. Protecting the fairies was their unshakable duty. No one can harm the fairies of the Frost Blood Pavilion. Seeing this, Duan Yun pulled out one of the old kitchen helper's girdles, swung it, and the watermelon seller Sun Lei was bound up and immobilized. Duan Yun looked at him and said, "Watch carefully. This is how you deal with these mad women." With that, he pulled the girdle and rushed towards the grand hall like the wind. The Frost Blood Pavilion appeared like an immortal realm. Besides the exquisite elegance of the pavilions, it was also perpetually shrouded in mist. When the mist spread, even if someone were to defecate publicly, it would have an air of mystique. At this moment, the sound of strings and winds had begun to emerge from the hall ahead, clearly indicating that the Frost Blood Festival was in full swing. Duan Yun was quite excited. Better to arrive by chance than early. He had been pondering whether, if these fairies were indeed guilty of great evil, he should first capture them, then present them to their sycophants and crush them on the spot. Yet, upon reconsideration, it seemed tedious and not very stylish. Now all his troubles were resolved. On the way, he learned one or two things from listening to Sun Lei's conversations. The Frost Blood Festival invited sycophants highly regarded by the Frost Blood Pavilion. These people already fell for the trap while eating melons, red willows sprouting on them. Thinking he had also eaten one of those melons, Duan Yun felt a little uneasy. Even though he was immune to all poisons, able to expel them like martial world female masters who could expel them using inner strength after intimate acts with men, thus avoiding pregnancy. This didn't mean there was no act involved. Consequently, Duan Yun's fury burned even hotter. Swinging Sun Lei with a girdle as if on a cloud, he realized the newcomers had malicious intent. The commotion Duan Yun caused yesterday was massive, but since it was an ancient world, widespread news only reached Lingshui City, hence Sun Lei and others were unaware that a demon had arrived in the city. Now he had only one thought. The newcomers had malicious intentions, and his beloved fairies were in danger. The kitchen helper fairy had already suffered. Next would be the prettier ones. though knowing he could lose his life with a howl in the presence of such a demon. The thought of the fairy's safety made Sun Lei disregard everything, ready to shout a warning. But unfortunately, his voice didn't draw attention from inside. Firstly, Duan Yun timely sealed his dumb acupoint, and secondly, it was too chaotic inside. Yes, it was too chaotic inside. Goodness! Is this the Frost Blood Festival? Even though Duan Yun was well-traveled, he couldn't help but marvel at this scene. Inside the hall, quite a few men were eating melons, getting closer and closer together. They blissfully ate the fairy melons, hugging each other tightly. Yes, to expedite the spreading of celestial fate, they had started practicing early. In Duan Yun's eyes, this was no Frost Blood Festival. It looked more like a dead male party. So many dead guys. It was utterly disgusting. Actually, Duan Yun misunderstood them. They were not male lovers but, in fact, true sycophants and cowards by definition. They were not male lovers, yet they could be male-male, but only due to the fairy's mission. The Grand Hall was already a scene of shamelessness. This Frost Blood Pavilion boasts of being an immortal realm, yet hosting such a gathering makes people do this, and still between men and men. Where are the ethics? Where is the morality? Where is the law? As a child, little Een was experiencing quite a shock at the moment. The Jade Guanyin only loves handsome men, so in little Yin's mind, it generally involves pretty boys and girls. But at this moment, a bunch of men made themselves sweat all over, which truly exceeded her cognition. Don't mention the freshly debuted little Een, even young hero Duan, with over 2.5 years of experience, was shocked. He knew about Yun State's affinity for male hormones, but it was his first encounter with a scene where a bunch of male hormones crawled everywhere. At this moment, his heroic spirit and anger soared. He shouted, "Still playing!" His voice carried strong inner strength, and originally in a heated atmosphere with climaxes rising. The chaotic, cowardly men were taken aback, all looking bewilderedly. "It's thundering! It's raining! Quickly collect the clothes!" Duan Yun continued to shout. Upon this utterance, the several bunches of men initially crawling together instantly collapsed into a heap. This sentence itself was quite illogical, regardless of whether it truly thundered. Just this alone was they were in fiery activity, and suddenly someone shouting at them to collect clothes. Isn't this insanity? Yet the oddity lies in that, despite reaching this stage, even if a bull crashed in, they shouldn't have stopped. But they did stop. It could even be said they stalled. Just like a soldering iron at its hottest moment being poured with a bucket of icy water, completely changing the atmosphere, almost awkwardly. After all, they aren't true male hormones. "Brother, get down. You're too deep." Watching the heated scene of the festival being interrupted, a group of fairies above showed displeasure. Leading Fairy Blood Robe Fairy questioned, "Have you considered the consequences of interrupting my Frost Blood Pavilion's Frost Blood Festival?" This Blood Robe Fairy seemed to recognize Duan Yun's inner strength had some depth. Otherwise, breaking his voice wouldn't have been able to interrupt these muggles. After all, there's a saying, when the heat is on, emotions are too intense to restrain. Thus, like the Axe Gang, this Blood Robe Fairy didn't directly strike, but rather questioned. If the opposite was willing to give an out, she was prepared to offer one. After all, the martial world isn't just about fighting and killing, especially among masters. But Duan Yun didn't seem like he wanted an out. With a stretch of his hand, a man with quite a few red willows on him was grabbed over. From my professional gynecologist's assessment, this is absolutely a contagion. He then looked towards the few fairies, asking, "It's said that your festival is to have them spread this disease, correct or not?" Upon hearing this, the man shouted particularly at the fairy present, further accusing his immortal fate as a disease. He couldn't help but shout, "What contagion? This is immortal fate." Right after saying this, bam, he was kicked flying by Duan Yun, like a cannonball flipping over 2 tables before stopping. Duan Yun kept staring at that blood robe fairy, continuing to ask, "You just need to answer yes or no?" By now, Blood Robe Fairy's expression turned exceptionally cold, saying, "Questioning me? Isn't that giving you face? We want them to spread immortal fate. What does it have to do with where you come from?" Duan Yun looked satisfied, saying, "Since you spoke the truth, It saved me trouble. Spreading contagion in the future land of young heroes. None of you should expect to live. What nonsense! Prepare to die. With a wave of her hand, for of her same sect had already flown down. The cowardly men present were wide-eyed. Today's happiness was too sudden. Not only did they catch a mortal fate, have affinity to attend this frost blood feast, they were even fortunate enough to receive the freshly created warm blood melon from the fairy and witness fairies dispatch demons. It was too thrilling. Just the elegance of the fairies flying down made them exclaim ceaselessly. It was too beautiful, too amazing. This wretched, ugly man still wouldn't kneel and plead for execution. It was truly disrespectful. On one hand, they wanted Duan Yun to hold on a bit longer, to feast their eyes fully, because this sort of moving fairy, missing it, feared a lifetime chance of never seeing it again. But on the other hand, they didn't want Duan Yun to hold too long lest the fairy would suffer fatigue. A fairy suffering fatigue was harder for them to bear than their old mother dying of exhaustion. Thus they figured 20 moves. 20 moves to kill this fool better looking than them, overindulged the pleasant sight, and the fairy wouldn't be overly fatigued. This was optimal. From the Frost Blood Pavilion fairy's movement technique, flying from the higher stage to the lower one, took at most 10 breaths. And under everyone's watch, Duan Yun defeated them in only 2 breaths. The movement technique of Frost Blood Pavilion fairies was undeniably exquisite, with loose robes, while their bodies floated within the robes up, down, left, right, difficult to discern specific positions, seemingly brimming with limitless follow-up moves. Though these cowardly men aren't very proficient, they could sense the gracefully moving technique. Some excitedly couldn't help but bite their fingers. At this moment, only to see Duan Yun grabbing a table with his left hand and a long bench with his right, swinging both sides, aimed at the incoming fairies with a strike. I hit! The gracefully moving Frost Blood Pavilion fairies were forcibly smashed to the ground by the table and long bench. In everyone's eyes, Duan Yun's hands turned into shadows, tables and benches densely striking the fairy bodies, beating the fairies into screams. Not only bursting their clothes but even their faces got beaten into pig heads. At this moment, new fairies from the Frost Blood Pavilion came to assist, but they were no match for the tables and benches, beaten with bloodied faces, kneeling and wailing. The change was so abrupt that the cowards only reacted now. Stop! Stop it! 2 of the cowards were the first to react, with expressions filled with grief as if they had lost their mothers. They rushed over to stop Duan Yun. But how could young hero Duan's tables and benches be ordinary? In the blink of an eye, they were battered, with their heads full of bumps, joining in with the howling. Reckless! Seeing the situation, the blood-robe fairy flew up, shouting, "Fairy, scatter the melons!" With a wave of her sleeve, it swirled like flowing clouds, and the blood watermelons from the banquet were drawn into her sleeve. With a flick of her sleeve, the blood watermelons fell downward. While Duan Yun was striking with great interest, he suddenly felt a gust of wind approaching, tossed up the tables and benches in his hands, and hurled them out. With 2 explosive bangs, the tables and benches collided with the falling watermelons and shattered. The flying melon flesh, resembling fresh blood, was a shocking sight. Immediately, more watermelons were hurled at Duan Yun. From the previous collision, Duan Yun had already realized these watermelons carried a lingering power, so he didn't dare be negligent and unleashed the 16 strange fist. The roaring fist power collided with the watermelons, and the resulting gust lifted surrounding tables and chairs and a few foolhardy cowards who wanted to help. Fairy Melon lands. With another shout from the blood-robe fairy, she and a pile of watermelons landed. As the watermelons hit the ground, there was a faint rumbling sound like thunder. At the moment the watermelons burst, their flesh flowed out like water, forming a continuous power that rolled towards Duan Yun. Duan Yun noticed, damn it, this was palm force. The blood watermelons of the Frost Blood Pavilion relied on this lingering power to inject their blood into the watermelons without damaging them. The opponent used palm techniques, so Duan Yun did too, raising his hand and performing the cloud-clearing palm. The 2 palm forces clashed, and the melon flesh seemed to turn liquid, even gaseous, turning everything red. The blood-robe fairy, as the great elder of the pavilion and one of its top 3 figures, was not weak. She suddenly leaped into the remaining pile of watermelons, flicking her sleeves, making the watermelons rotate around her. 1 watermelon in the middle, 3 spins to the left, 3 spins to the right, cut it in half with 1 slice. The blood-robe fairy muttered and gestured with her hands, making the watermelons follow her and attack Duan Yun. Bang! 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 Duan Yun countered with palm force. The peculiarity of the watermelons was that after they burst, the flesh would generate a new resilient force, continuing to attack. Ordinary sect masters would have been overwhelmed by this watermelon strength and unable to catch their breath. But Duan Yun was no ordinary master. His inner strength was vast and continuous, and the power of his cloud-clearing palm was heavily layered. The key was that he could use his skin to breathe. Where did this demon come from? My fairy melon strength can't seem to faze him. I attack his lower body, and he attacks mine, shameless. A man acting like a woman? A woman's lower body is precious, not casually attacked. This guy clearly doesn't respect women and is an evil demon. Damn you! What are you muttering about? Evil demon. I'm a young hero. A young hero. Be careful. I'll sue you for defamation. Facing the self-muttering blood-robe fairy, Duan Yun exploded in anger. This great elder of the Frost Blood Pavilion had a flaw, unable to hide her thoughts. Especially when using cultivation techniques, her thoughts would slip out unconsciously. This had caused her losses before, as it exposed her intentions. It was also why she lost to her junior sister despite having superior true chi. And now, this self-talk made the evil demon, Duan Yun, thunderously furious. When the old demon gets angry, that's trouble. Duan Yun hadn't been serious initially, just playing around, but after being insulted, he refused to hold back anymore. Die, you slandering madwoman! With the 15-road chi fist forming an unbroken chain, resisting the watermelon strength while gathering momentum. 16 strange fist. Intent gathering. At the moment intent gathering was complete, the blood-robe fairy suddenly felt the flow of air changing around her. Or rather, the surrounding chi energy had undergone a tremendous change. Along with it, her lingering hand technique was altered. Her surroundings emptied. The once rotating melon flesh had all gathered at the other side, and she felt the air thinning considerably. Strike! At this moment, Duan Yun's intent gathering ended, and he unleashed a punch. As the punch was thrown, the surrounding air flowed like water. Flowing along was the blood-like melon flesh. In the eyes of onlookers, these melon pieces transformed into a giant fist. A blood-colored fist that solidly smashed into the dearest blood-robe fairy. No! 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 Amidst the wails of the cowards, the Frost Blood Pavilion's great elder's arms, shielded in front of her, fractured. The fist power continued penetrating, shredding her clothes, breaking ribs. As the fist power escalated, her pristine white teeth flew out. After this punch, the great elder was defeated. But not entirely, for this was the Frost Blood Pavilion, her domain. She not only had her sect members but also the cowards. By now, 2 cowards wailed and fearlessly lunged to stop Duan Yun from further harming their revered fairy. Seeing them, Duan Yun shouted, "Good timing!" He extended his hand, and the 2 were frozen in midair. Use your hair to make her feel pain. Immortal crane. Divine needle. Duan Yun launched his palms, causing all body hair of the 2 cowards to detach, flying like needles towards the great elder. At this moment, little Een was petrified. She watched as 2 hairy men suddenly became hairless bald chickens. Having followed Duan Yun for so long, she thought she had seen all his moves, but this was new. If it were used on her, wouldn't she also become hairless? Almost simultaneously, her legs involuntarily tightened in fear. The great elder, already gravely injured by Duan Yun's 16 strange fist, intent gathering, had no time to evade. Thus, the flying divine needles pierced into her body. Intense and terrifying itching and pain spread throughout her body, causing her to wail. The two hairless cowards shed tears of blood upon seeing this. No, no. Seeing the fairy great elder knocked to the ground, they were so distressed that they wished their entire family could die in exchange for her recovery. Seeing her being tormented by their hair, they were so miserable they didn't want to live. What does it mean to say the pain on her body echoes in my heart? The cowards' hearts were not just dripping blood but torn to pieces. Bang, 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 bang. The roof and windows of the great hall shattered. Those were red ribbons. The Vice Pavilion Master and the 18 immortals are here. Someone cried out, and in an instant, fairies appeared on the red ribbons. The two leading fairies stomped with bare feet, spinning the red ribbons like venomous snakes to coil around Duan Yun. This was the 18 immortals' most efficient killing technique, capable of binding the enemy's neck in an instant and hanging them until they are strangled to death. Break! Two streaks of black sword chi penetrated the red ribbons, striking the two fairies' calves. The sword chi, carrying an ominous black aura, swiftly penetrated their flesh and blood. The two fairies tried to retreat, but Duan Yun had already leaped over the red ribbons, reaching them. Duan Yun grabbed their heads with his bare hands, smashing them together. With a bang, their heads and bodies collided, creating teeth-grinding sounds of cracking bones and flesh, and the faces of both fairies distorted from the violent impact. As excruciating pain entered their sea of consciousness, Duan Yun already grabbed the two, leaping upwards with terrifying shockwave power, and hurled them at their companions. Fierce throw, a sight to behold. Duan Yun soared into the sky with the two maidens in tow, causing palpable shockwaves around them. Within these waves was not only his surging true chi fist power, but also the Ming Tide power. The first two of the 18 fairy maidens had already been killed by a powerful blow to the head, followed by 4 others who no longer cared about maintaining their elegance, quickly moving their legs like flying spiders to rush for support. Unfortunately, they underestimated Duan Yun's strength. As they approached him, feeling the terrifying oscillations emanating from Duan Yun, it was too late to avoid his might. A thunderous explosion sounded, reminiscent of spring thunder hitting the ground. Duan Yun crushed the two fairies onto the ground. The horrific chi force surged outward, sending the stone slabs on the ground flying like paper, along with the 4 supporting fairies. 2 of them collided directly with their companions in Duan Yun's grasp, flesh and bones shattered, while the remaining 2, although not directly hit, were so shaken by the chi force that they spewed blood from internal injuries. Yet, despite this extremely painful experience, the 4 simultaneously let out moans akin to pleasure. In the eyes of the onlookers, these fairies appeared strange, akin to stubborn donkeys that felt more satisfied the more they were whipped. No, how could fairies be compared to stubborn donkeys? This time, the misunderstanding by the cowardly spectators concerning the women of the Frost Blood Pavilion was due to their forced moans rather than genuine enjoyment of being punished. Under the onslaught of the Ming Tide, their bodies had become extraordinarily sensitive. For example, the red silk markings on their bodies became hotter and itchier than ever, so much that despite their flesh and bones cracking, they still wanted to scratch. Since it's so itchy, let this young hero treat you. As he spoke, he slapped his palms on the women already deprived of breath, causing the remaining hair on their bodies to shoot out like flying needles, piercing the 4 fairies of the Frost Blood Pavilion. Consequently, their already sensitive bodies became even itchier, prompting them to moan softly while shouting, "It's so itchy!" Yes, the young hero's treatment of itchiness made the previous itch seem insignificant. The fairies of the Frost Blood Pavilion, subjected to this severe torment, found it hard to describe their feelings. Their bodies were extraordinarily sensitive, while multiple sensations erupted simultaneously, akin to adding watermelon and oranges, and even excrement and urine to a big stew pot. It was unbearably uncomfortable. They had never felt such an intense level of discomfort. Very quickly, some couldn't endure it any longer, convulsing all over, foaming at the mouth, and suffering until their eyes rolled back. The cowardly spectators watched in horror, their eyes wide with rage and tears of blood streaming down, kneeling and continually howling insults. Where did this madman come from to treat the mortal fairies in such a manner? This will have consequences. Yet the fiercer they cursed, the more ruthless Duan Yun became. Consequently, several cowards, and scathed initially, were so enraged and anxious that they foamed at the mouth. One even died on the spot. He couldn't bear to see the fairies suffering such humiliation, so he perished. He died staring at the fairies' direction, his face filled with pain and reluctance. At this point, 6 of the 18 fairy maidens had been lost, and the remaining 12 received orders not to continue charging, but instead circled around the towering main hall. They danced along with the red silk, resembling flying immortals. Shuang's 18 techniques. At this time, a figure in a robe of red and black appeared and issued a command. Thus, the 12 fairies spinning above descended, accompanied by the sound of fluttering garments. Despite the Shuang's 18 techniques only having 12 fairies left, they still launched an attack. Duan Yun suddenly realized these 12 women were quite formidable. They rode the red silk, attacking in groups of 6, each group moving simultaneously. But the 6 women each used different techniques. Fingers, palms, fists, feet, even legs stretching for fierce grabs. The marvel lay in their diverse techniques seamlessly merging. It was as if an individual with 12 hands and 12 legs were simultaneously attacking him. Duan Yun raised his hand and unleashed strange boxing moves in quick succession. The air filled with terrifying booming sounds from fists and fists, flesh and flesh colliding intensely. After Shuang 12 techniques' 6 moves ended, Duan Yun solely relied on strange boxing to counterattack, yet failed to gain the upper hand, causing him to slide backward. But before he could regain his footing, the other group of 6 women swiftly followed. These women appeared even more passionate than the previous group, all simultaneously shouting, Shuang's 18 techniques! Bam! 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 This time, the group's changes surprised Duan Yun once more. If the previous group exhibited diverse and strange techniques, this group seemed more rigid. Indeed, they attacked together, hands and feet swinging, akin to a radio-calisthenics routine. Suddenly, the radio-calisthenics techniques assaulted him, and he momentarily couldn't find an apparent flaw. Their techniques appeared rigid and not agile, yet they were linked end to end, using the same school of attack for defense. Duan Yun's figure swayed as the 6 women rode the red silk, trying to trap him within. Shuang's 18 techniques, created by the 2nd-generation pavilion master Shuangling of the Frost Blood Pavilion. Legend has it that during her youth, she fell in love with an immortal in the heavenly court while dreaming, and in her dream sought his love. Yet, that immortal was extremely cold and rejected her affection outright. It's said that persistent women scare chaste men, so Shuangling self-created Shuang's 18 techniques within her dreams, using 18 methods and postures to cling to that immortal. No matter how aloof and pure that immortal was, ultimately, he couldn't resist her entanglement and gave in. From then on, once Shuangling awoke, her power advanced further, cementing the glory of the Frost Blood Pavilion. It's said that the 2nd Pavilion Master was undeniably the greatest figure in the history of Frost Blood Pavilion. Later, she mysteriously disappeared in her old age, and the Frost Blood Pavilion unanimously believed she had returned to the heavenly court. The era of Shuangling was the most glorious period for the Frost Blood Pavilion. At that time, the fame of the Red House was far inferior to theirs. As time passed, the subsequent generations of Frost Blood Pavilion declined, but the Shuang's 18 techniques of Pavilion Master Shuangling survived in this way. For so many years, the Frost Blood Pavilion never produced another genius with terrifying talent like the 2nd Pavilion Master Shuangling, and no one could directly execute the entire set of Shuang's 18 techniques. However, when the 18 techniques were divided into 18 moves, each disciple practiced only one move to perfection, and they could achieve a similar effect. Back in the day, Pavilion Master Shuangling could make the immortal succumb with these 18 techniques. This passed down Shuang's 18 techniques was enough to entangle a martial world grandmaster. Now Duan Yun had been entangled. This scene, in turn, filled the coward with ecstatic joy who was nearly heartbroken to death originally. A fairy should not be disgraced. Make this madman pay the price. But it was this move that ignited Duan Yun's fighting spirit. Qing, come out. In an instant, Duan Yun's robe vibrated, and the Dharma Shaoqing in a green and white qipao appeared. This time, as soon as the Dharma Shaoqing appeared, electric light flowed around Duan Yun and her, resembling a god or demon. 16 strange fists, ultimate. The next moment, the arms of Duan Yun and Qing transformed into a blur. There is a saying in the martial world, 2 fists can't fight 4 hands. But ever since Duan Yun's Dharma appeared, he could handle 24 hands alone, because he was simply too fast. The afterimages left by his fists hadn't dissipated before new fist shadows covered them. Duan Yun at one point felt it wasn't enough, his extraordinary wisdom unfolding. He shouted, "Embrace Sparrowtail, fist intent." Embrace Sparrowtail is a move from the Jade Sword True Understanding, exclusively used by the Netherworld Jade Sword Immortal Little Yu, capable of producing dozens of jade arms to perform Jade Sword Finger. And at this moment, Duan Yun, with extraordinary wisdom, applied Little Yu's move to Qing. "You all are my wings. Use them as I please." As his voice sounded, dozens of arms extended from the back of Dharma Shaoqing, resembling a peacock spreading its tail. No, even if it's a peacock, it's a fire peacock, because all these arms were red, as if flames were flowing through them. "Mad women, taste my fists. Oh la 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 la." Boom, boom, boom. The dozens of arms from the Dharma joined the bombardment. Arg! Arg har! The arms of Duan Yun and Dharma Shaoqing fiercely pounded, so rhythmic that even the sounds of the 12 fairies being hit had a rhythm. In less than an instant, the clothing of 4 out of the 12 fairies, along with their red ribbons, had been shattered. Their eyebrows and hair were singed by the fire power on the fists, and their bodies appeared burnt, red and purple as if scraped. The situation turned rapidly. Just when the cowards finally showed smiles after gaining an upper hand, in a blink, those smiles froze. Who would have thought a single person could truly fight 12? The fist-marked scars on the fairies were like sharp needles, piercing into the cowardly hearts decorated with red willow ribbons. No, no. At this point, Duan Yun was seen soaring onto one of the fairies, launching a fist technique assault. Seeing the fairy being beaten until smoke rose from her body, Littleine couldn't help but remark, "I'm familiar with this." This old demon Duan, not only were his fists formidable, but his riding skills were top-notch. Even she, considered a wild mare among women, couldn't escape being submissively ridden by him. With a loud boom, Duan Yun descended from the fairy, and she fell like a rag doll right in front of a group of cowards. Her body emitted white smoke, originally retaining a breath of qi, yet with a gentle spin of her body, she spewed a mouthful of fresh blood, dying from then on. She died with her eyes open, died right in front of this group of cowards. 2 cowards, who had indulged too deeply, couldn't bear the impact after seeing the tragedy. Grabbing the wooden cone from the ground, they stabbed it into their own necks. Seeing the fairy being beaten to death, they would rather commit suicide. At this moment, the woman in red and black below observed the scene, a change appearing on her cold face. As the second pavilion master, currently the top expert in the Frost Blood Pavilion, Wu Shuang knew the visitor was indeed very strong. So she immediately changed strategies, shouting, "Frost Blood Illusion!" As soon as she spoke, all the fairies still able to fight soared into the air, and at this moment, more disciples of the Frost Blood Pavilion arrived. They all jumped up, spread their legs, and sprayed out blood. They forced out the frost blood in advance. In an instant, the sky was filled with red blood. This blood clearly contained true qi shaped like willow leaves. With a push of her palms, second pavilion master Wu Shuang sent the frost blood spinning and flying. These willow leaf-shaped blood came flying with such sharpness that 2 cowardly men nearby couldn't escape in time, and were instantly slashed in the throat, collapsing to the ground dead. Yet they looked happy in death. Dying under fairy blood is no loss. While they were happy to die under the fairy's frost blood, Duan Yun found it disturbingly disgusting. His fist technique was like cannonballs, forming a hurricane around him, executing the martial move with a sealed harmony. Even with fist power to protect him, Duan Yun could still feel the venomous and ethereal nature of the flying blood. This blood carried an itching coldness. Surely it was poisoned. This was probably what caused the contagious disease. In an instant, the entire great hall turned crimson. If the earlier melon guts created a bloody ground, now the entire hall was truly covered in blood. Blood like flying knives scattered around, hosting a bloody feast in the hall. It truly became a world of blood. "Retreat quickly!" Someone shouted, and everyone retreated backward. Those who were slower were instantly hit by the blood willow and fell to the ground. The bystanding cowards were pleased. Firstly, there were fewer competitors, and secondly, under this offensive of fairy blood scattering, they didn't believe that maniac could survive. Truly, fairies come from above. How can the wretched earth compete? This madman attacking fairies, he's destined to die. But then, the situation changed yet again. If the second pavilion master led the fairies in a bloody storm, at this moment, Duan Yun would change the color of the wind and clouds. "Screw your mother. How dare you disgust this young hero like this? Not playing anymore. Meet your end." Heroic fire ascending dragon dominance. Terrifying fire lotus bloomed around Duan Yun. And then, a dragon-like fist power shot straight upwards. The previously knife-like frost blood was instantly blasted away. The scorching fire fist power immediately roasted several fairies scattered in the sky. Duan Yun and Little Qing seemed to ride on a dragon, breaking through the roof. Once below the group of fairies, Duan Yun suddenly reached above them. "Northwest, float!" With an order from Second Pavilion Master Wu Shuang, the fairies received their instructions, floating toward the northwest while continuing to scatter blood, fighting as they retreated. Such a scenario of one man pursuing a group of fairies, even Second Pavilion Master Wu Shuang, who had seen much, had never encountered. This outlandish madman is truly unreasonable. However, she had another move. The northwest happened to be where the Frost Blood Pavilion's kitchen was located. Several carts of blood melon were still there. Duan Yun, as lively as a dragon, stepped on his right foot, again knocking down a dozen fairies. The fairies hit by the fire fist power fell with black smoke rising, like downed fighters. Seeing the Frost Blood Pavilion's frost blood illusion on the brink of collapse, at that moment, Second Pavilion Master Wu Shuang suddenly surrounded herself with chi force, shouting, "Melons come!" In an instant, several carts of watermelon flew toward the Second Pavilion Master. Witnessing this, even the struggling fairies had a glimmer of hope in their eyes. There's hope. On this day, the Second Pavilion Master re-entered the realm of Frost Blood Melon's divine power. Though it was clearly watermelons flying in the air, at that moment, Duan Yun felt it was rolling thunder. Noticing the changes, he again stepped on his right foot and flew high, drawing his sword and shouting, "Love! Infinite! Melon come!" As the Second Pavilion Master's shout echoed, the frost blood melon spinning around her suddenly exploded. The blood melon burst into a river of blood, mixing with the frost blood already sprinkled by the fairies. The chi force entwined around the Second Pavilion Master's body erupted, and the blood wrapped around her like ribbons. The surrounding air temperature plummeted, as the blood carried a bone-chilling coldness. Watermelon immortal frost. Second Pavilion Master Wu Shuang finally unleashed her ultimate move. In an instant, the blood flowed, the temperature dropped drastically, and the trees and flowers around were all frosted over. It was as if she had created a world of frost blood. From the outside, the frost blood formed into a striped sphere, looking like an enormous blood watermelon from afar. In the eyes of Duan Yun and Little Een, it was not just like a blood watermelon, but more like a living creature, a head like a blood watermelon, exuding waves of malice. "Come on." At this moment, Second Pavilion Master Wu Shuang, her eyes crimson, looked at Duan Yun, intending to entomb him in this sea of frost blood. The Frost Blood Pavilion hadn't encountered such a formidable enemy in a long time, and she hadn't used this killer move for quite a while. Although executing this killer move would harm her own body and set back her power by more than 10 years, if it could annihilate this maniac, it would be worth it. Anyone who stands in their way to return to the heavenly court must die. Like the fairies of the Red House, the fairies of the Frost Blood Pavilion were also obsessed with returning to the heavenly court. Just their paths were different. Though the Frost Blood Pavilion's reputation in recent years did not match that of the Red House's fairies, they never admitted defeat in the endeavor to return to the heavenly court. Those who block the path die. D. Seeing Duan Yun in midair, she was already maneuvering the watermelon Immortal Frost to meet him. But at this moment, she suddenly discovered that Fellow's body was suddenly covered in sword light and sword shadow. No, not right. How could someone possibly wield so many swords at once? Before, Duan Yun was only using his fists and feet against them, and in her eyes, he should be a grandmaster of fist techniques. But now why was he suddenly wielding swords? Judging by this, the sword and saber technique might not be inferior to his fists and feet. But she was fearless, because within the frost blood, she was invincible. Her opponent not fleeing at this moment suited her perfectly. In the sky, Duan Yun, wrapped in Dharma image Xiaoyu, had already formed a sword blade storm. The speed at which this sword blade storm formed was incredibly fast, like thunder erupting on a clear day. The next moment, the sword blade storm formed by Love Unlimited collided with the watermelon Immortal Frost. With a rumble, Immortal Frost and the sword blade storm shook, generating chi force akin to towering waves, instantly sweeping people away. Some cowardly men who had just been relaxing had their underpants swept over their heads, looking like perverts in masks. The collision of two terrifying forces allowed Duan Yun to feel the poisons and chills within the frost blood. Even though it was clearly summer, and he had been fighting so intensely that he was sweating, now he felt as if he were in an icy world, breaking out in goosebumps all over. But this chill instead ignited his fighting spirit. Love Unlimited. Unlimited love. The first collision made second pavilion master Wu Shuang feel astonished. For the opponent withstood her watermelon Immortal Frost. She was actually not invincible within the frost. The opponent's strength exceeded her expectations. But as the clash continued, Wu Shuang's face was fraught with surprise. Now her whole body surged with chi blood, the veins and blood vessels on her face and forehead bulging, with a faint crimson visible in the blood vessels, making her face look like it was covered with blood lines, appearing more like a demon. That was a sign of her pushing her cultivation technique to the peak. But even like this, she could only fight a draw with the opponent. No, as the collision continued, the opponent even became more and more fierce. Bang, 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 bang. The watermelon Immortal Frost broke open, and in everyone's eyes, Duan Yun's swirling storm had smashed open her Immortal Frost watermelon and drilled into the interior like a poisoned dragon drill. Bang, 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 bang. With the sword blade storm of Love Unlimited penetrating, the Immortal Frost that looked like a blood watermelon shattered even more completely, like a shelled egg. The hitherto self-proclaimed invincible within the frost, second pavilion master Wu Shuang's face was now full of fright. Watching the approaching storm of swords, she couldn't help but scream, "Don't come near me!" But the swords were speechless, only relentlessly whirling down. Ah! Faced with the sword storm that seemed intent on engulfing her completely, Wu Shuang gritted her teeth and severed several meridians, unleashing a terrifying power. Duan Yun only felt Love Unlimited stall momentarily, as if frozen. But this stalling lasted only an instant, for the Immortal Frost was limited, but young hero's love was unlimited. Though the sword storm was affected, weakened by the Immortal Frost that the second pavilion master squeezed out desperately, filled with saber and sword chi, it did not halt Duan Yun from continuing to spin. With a loud boom, like muffled thunder rumbling, the watermelon formed by the Immortal Frost completely shattered, revealing both their figures. At this moment, Duan Yun, enveloped in the remaining sword and saber energy, descended from above, engulfing second pavilion master Wu Shuang. In the next instant, Wu Shuang's entire body rotated along with the sword and saber chi, her form becoming a blur. Then came the downward plunge, a rapid descent. "No! Don't!" the cowards and remaining fairies exclaimed. Unfortunately, the more fiercely they shouted, the faster the descent occurred. Young hero Duan enjoyed completely breaking what others cherished most, shattering it into pieces. At this moment, what shattered included Wu Shuang's robes and skin. With a booming sound, this descent struck the ground, with second pavilion master Wu Shuang landing head first. In an instant, the stone slabs on the ground disintegrated into dust mist, forming a whirling pit. From the pit, Duan Yun sprang up and landed at the edge of the hole. Inside the pit, there was a splash of bright red blood. The body of the second pavilion master looked like it had been cut in half, with only 2 long legs left standing there. The upper half of the body was no longer visible. The outcome of victory and defeat has been decided. Not only was it a matter of victory and defeat, but also of life and death. The remaining fairies of the Frost Blood Pavilion knew the great situation had collapsed. With the second pavilion master dead and the great pavilion master not returned, there was no one left in the pavilion to stop this evil demon, so they each used their movement techniques to escape. After all, their opponent fought fiercely with the second pavilion master and should be tired. The second pavilion master bought them precious time to flee. Unfortunately, at this moment, a voice suddenly rang out. "Where the hell do you think you're running to?" Strange boxing, deliberate strike. Duan Yun leapt up as if he didn't need to breathe, arriving behind the 2 fairies. As soon as they tried to fly away, they were pulled back by a forceful fist power. They turned back in terror, seeing the handsome face of Duan Yun, and shouted, "No! Don't!" The word "no" was only half out of their mouths before they were struck by the violent fist power, their bones and flesh shattering, flying away like broken sacks. When they landed, they had only 1 breath left. Yet Duan Yun seized them while hot, forming a terrifying tidal shock wave again, and hurled them at their sect mates. With a smash, the 2 finally stopped breathing, and with them, 4 more sect mates who were hit followed suit. To all onlookers, Duan Yun seemed to have smoke emerging from his head, his body as fast as lightning, raising and lowering his fists, each blow taking out a little fairy, without blinking an eye. Because of the immense force, the fabric on his back was torn, revealing incredibly sturdy muscles. Originally, there were still dozens of fairies left, but before long, they were all killed. This is the efficiency of the young hero boxer. The cowards knelt on the ground, watching fairies die one by one in front of them. Some still had smoke rising from their bodies, with exposed skin bearing the same red willow marks as theirs, marking their connection with the fairies. The fairies were dead, and the celestial fate dissipated. One coward stood up and shouted at Duan Yun, "Evil demon! You have no love! You killed the fairies, killed our love. We just wanted to spread the celestial fate, but because you didn't have any, you were jealous of us, so you killed them. Evil demon, you're utterly vile." Duan Yun picked up the corpse of a Frost Blood Pavilion fairy, disdainfully saying, "This is a damn infectious disease, and those who spread it indiscriminately are truly disgusting and deserve death. You slander. This is clearly celestial fate." Duan Yun looked at him, raised an eyebrow and said, "Oh, is that so? Then watch closely how your celestial fate is completely obliterated." He tossed the body up and smashed it with a punch. Then the fairy's body was blasted into the air, exploding like fireworks. Not even a whole body was left. The coward immediately fell to his knees, begging for mercy. "No! No!" But the more he shouted, the more Duan Yun hit, casually tossing another body up. "Wrong! I was wrong! I beg you, don't!" The group of cowards watched as the fairy bodies were all shattered, heartbroken and breathless, all kneeling with bleeding tears, begging for mercy. But Dr. Duan was speechless, solely focused on eradicating the source of the disease. So in no time, The dead fairies were blasted into fireworks. Their blood and flesh rained down, and now the group of cowards completely collapsed. Many couldn't accept the reality, either dying of heart attacks on the spot from heartbreak or gouging out their own eyes because they couldn't bear to see, while those afraid of pain were hanging themselves. Seeing the cowards either self-harming or committing suicide, Duan-Yun not only didn't feel soft-hearted, but actually felt a sense of satisfaction. He snapped his fingers, and Little Een immediately responded, asking, "What should we do next? The people are dead, but the pavilion still stands. Loot all the wealth and then burn it down. Cult centers like this evil sect shouldn't exist at all." The cowards didn't expect Duan-Yun to go so far. Killing the people, destroying the bodies wasn't enough. He even wanted to destroy the immortal realm that the fairies breathed in, making it even more unacceptable, leading to more suicides and self-harm. The melon seller, Sun Lei, watched all this, eyes red, pulled out a watermelon knife, and slashed it across his neck. His last words before suicide were, "Fairies, I'll sell watermelons for you in the next life." For a moment, Frost Blood Pavilion was full of lamenting cowards. Duan-Yun and Little Een ignored these abnormal people, instinctively starting to clean up the battlefield. It must be said, this Frost Blood Pavilion's cultivation technique might indeed have something to do with watermelons, as there were quite a few watermelon elements inside and out, like the copper wind chimes shaped like watermelons, and the bowls used for eating shaped like half watermelons. In this place, which resembled a sect ancestral hall, there was even a tribute to a watermelon man. Indeed, a watermelon man, with a head that's a watermelon and a body made of 2 watermelons. These watermelons stacked together formed a human shape, with 3 thick incense sticks inserted in the top. This watermelon man wasn't a living thing, nor did it have features like eyes, yet it exuded a sinister and cunning aura. In this dark shrine, this watermelon man, worshipped like a divine spirit and left here who knows how long or by some means, showed no signs of being weathered or rotten. Truly unconventional, such a thing being worshipped here. This couldn't possibly be the ancestor of Frost Blood Pavilion, could it? Duan-Yun saw it, deciding to take it down for examination. With a twist of his hand, the watermelon head of the watermelon man was twisted off. As soon as the head was twisted off, a clanging sound was heard, and a crack appeared on the wall. Wow, did this actually open a secret chamber switch? It can be said that those who enjoy researching have quite a bit of luck, as Duan-Yun opened what was a rather hard-to-detect secret chamber. Behind the crack was a passageway, looking deep and long, with red cloth draped above. Duan-Yun walked inside, momentarily feeling he was walking through a spooky tomb passage. Honestly, with this atmosphere, even if there was a coffin at the end of the passage, he wouldn't be surprised. At the end of the passage was a thick stone door. The stone door had a large keyhole, and just by looking at it, it seems like it needs 4 keys to open. In the martial world, there are many sects, but also many thieves, especially those coveting the divine skills, treasures, and even the sect leader's wife of both large and small sects, so secret chambers requiring several keys to open are not uncommon. Fortunately, as a professional martial world young hero and gynecologist, Duan-Yun being an expert lockpicker is quite reasonable. He stretched out his right fist and smashed it forward. With a boom, the keyhole along with the thick stone door was blasted through, swiftly completing the lockpicking. Almost simultaneously, the stone door suddenly shot out numerous poison arrows, followed by a surge of flames. In the eyes of Little Een behind him, it appeared as if old demon Duan was pierced by 1,000 arrows and then roasted. Yet moments later, Duan-Yun still stood there, about to push the door open, and her expression returned to normal. She wondered, really, how could old demon Duan be at a disadvantage with such mechanisms? Duan-Yun pushed the door. The breaking body sword energy lingering around him gradually dissipated. Inside the door was a very spacious secret chamber, or rather a hall. Upon entering, as the lamps inside were lit up, the first thing that caught the eye was a large mural. This red-bottom mural was much like the colorful paintings in temples. Duan-Yun moved the lamp to take a look and found the mural to be an artifact. Though not an archaeologist, he could still understand this mural. The mural depicted a woman dreaming of an immortal from the heavenly court. She was particularly fond of that immortal and wanted to pursue him but could not. There's a saying that a persistent woman can scare any man, and this woman created 18 poses to entwine that immortal in her dream. The mural was vividly painted, showcasing these 18 poses skillfully and beautifully, almost like watching a show. However, Duan Yun didn't have any feeling of watching a show. Not because the woman in the painting wasn't beautiful, but because of the immortal. The immortal had handsome features, and Duan Yun even felt he looked a bit like Chao Enjuan. But how come his figure was like a watermelon? A watermelon-like figure with handsome features truly gave a bizarre feeling, akin to some alien creature. Duan Yun suddenly realized and pondered, could it be that the watermelon man worshipped outside is the immortal in the dream? This secret chamber is very large, yet also quite empty. Aside from the mysterious wall mural, there were only a few silver melons left. The silver-cast watermelons were also made to resemble human figures and placed in the corners of the room. Visibly, these 4 humanoid silver melons had some water stains at the top, making them appear somewhat dirty. Duan Yun didn't want to touch the dirty things. He waved his hand, signaling Little Een to collect them all. Little Een picked up each silver watermelon, broke them apart, and put them into a cloth bag from somewhere. At this moment, she suddenly said to one of the walls, "There are words on this wall." Duan Yun leaned over and saw that they were phrases like, "Love you, love fiercely. Why can't I sleep with the Shuang Ling as she did?" and such. The writing was hurried and frenzied, as if a crazy woman was flirting with a man. Duan Yun read word by word and found that although the writing was hurried and short, it was logical. This should have been written by the current pavilion master of the Frost Blood Pavilion. The object of her affection seemed to be the handsome-faced watermelon man in the mural. At the same time, she harbored great jealousy towards the second-generation pavilion master Shuang Ling, her ancestor. Because ever since the establishment of the Frost Blood Pavilion, only Shuang Ling had slept with this watermelon god in her dreams. In these writings, she did not mention the watermelon god's name, only referring to him as Ling Melon Venerable. Every time I think of being with you, I just want to cling to your head, overwhelmed with emotion. Seeing this line, Duan Yun realized why the top of the silver melons had water stains. This was indeed dirty, and they planned to sell it off later to realize the money. The pavilion master was currently not here because she intended to emulate Shuang Ling and go to the spirit god Acupoint to sleep with the Ling Melon Venerable. Back then, Shuang Ling entangled herself with the Ling Melon Venerable in that Acupoint. Where exactly the spirit god Acupoint is, the writings on the wall do not mention, only saying it is a rare intertwining of reality and illusion. Only there can one truly merge with the immortal Ling Melon Venerable. Having realized this secret, the crazy pavilion master set off on her journey. Damn it! That crazy woman dreaming managed to escape calamity. After that, Duan Yun and Little Een searched around but didn't make any other good discoveries. So they began to set the fire. The Frost Blood Pavilion was once renowned in the martial world but gradually faded compared to the Red House. Yet it was an established sect with generations of heritage, including the ancestral industry of the Frost Blood Watermelon. The Frost Blood Pavilion was extensive both inside and outside. Thus, this fire burned very large, very vigorously. The main hall, in particular, was burning the fiercest. Duan Yun stood amid the burning main hall, moved his fingers, carving a large line of words on the wall with sword chi. The exterminator! Duan Yun. Young hero Duan is here. Even though the flames were burning intensely, turning the sky red. Some cowards were still unwilling to flee. Some were holding the broken bodies on the ground, like the fairy's arm or a melon, either despairing in their gaze, crying loudly, or looking at Duan Yun with resentment and malice. Duan Yun ignored them. Ultimately, these people were also sick. It's just as well they want to die. In the future land of young heroes, everyone must be responsible for preventing contagious diseases. At this moment, some cowards were caught on fire, crying out in pain, immediately regretting it. It hurts so much. So they struggled, shouting to Duan Yun and Little Een, "Help! Save us!" Ah! Duan Yun paid them no mind. allowing them to perish in the sea of flames. When cowards were too afraid of pain to die with a woman, they were despised among cowards, deserved to die. You let us die, you'll die badly. A coward, rolling on the ground in flames, shouted resentfully. Look, he's even cursing you. Duan Yun and Little Een left this immortal realm, and in this out in and out, a generation-old established sect was extinguished. Yes, he left words on the wall. If that crazy pavilion master wants revenge, he'll wait. At the moment, he has no time to look for that woman. After all, he knows nothing about the so-called spirit god acupoint. This should be a secret of the Frost Blood Pavilion. Even the rolling door probably doesn't have much information. Little Een held those silver melons and asked, "Where are we going now?" Truth be told, even just following to watch the show, she still found it thrilling. This old demon Duan smashes people to pieces, then sets fire to destroy others' bases. Terribly evil deeds. Yet undeniably, it's thrilling. She faintly worrying if after leaving old demon Duan, she wouldn't often see such grand shows. What should she do? One must know that people, like bodies once accustomed to certain intensity stimuli, if the intensity drops suddenly, there wouldn't be much satisfaction, instead quite a bit of emptiness. Duan Yun said, "Let's eat first." Eat? And after eating, go to the Dusk Temple to find the evil monk. Duan Yun replied, "No way, it's just been 2 days. Little Een said, perplexed. "What do you mean by 2 days? You brought down 2 sects in 2 days? Are you planning to bring down 3 sects in 3 days? Little Een said, even though she was accustomed to watching high-intensity shows, "Isn't this intensity too high? This is equivalent to being in the climax all the time, never coming down. If they stay a few more days, would the forces of the martial world around here be wiped out?" Duan Yun looked at her and said, "If things can be settled in 3 days, why not?" To be honest, he kind of missed Brother Morong and Shining, which is why he slightly accelerated the progress. According to his usual efficiency, he should have rested 1 night before heading to the Dusk Temple. Now that he has a mount beneath him, he can sleep on the road, so there's no problem. After all, it's not me who doesn't need sleep, but Little Een. As expected, after a hot pot meal in Lingshui City, Duan Yun and Little Een basked in the sun, feeling a bit drowsy from a food coma. However, what made Little Een suffer was that Duan Yun was already asleep atop her, while she had to continue rushing to Dusk Temple. Otherwise, he wanted to see where her limits lay. But Little Een couldn't help but admire Duan Yun. After fighting for 2 consecutive days, he just seemed a little sleepy. Dusk Temple. Dusk Temple was situated on a mountain. This mountain wasn't very tall, and the temple gates weren't grand. Yet at a glance, it still instilled a sense of magnificence. The sunset bathed the earth, and the buildings of Dusk Temple seemed to encapsulate the glow of the sunset, making them look even more red and golden. On the way, Duan Yun and Little Een heard a saying in the martial world that Dusk Temple always seemed to be in perpetual dusk. Coincidentally, the two arrived at the temple right at dusk. At a glance, Dusk Temple appeared even more dusk-like. A wide bluestone staircase extended all the way to the temple gate. On the path, only Duan Yun and Little Een were present, creating an atmosphere of silent solitude. This silence, paired with the grandeur of the temple, formed a solemn scene. Walking on these stone steps, you could almost feel an awe as if about to meet true immortals and Buddhas. Duan Yun dismounted from Little Een and climbed the steps. He entered through the temple gate, crossed a giant stone-paved lotus plaza, and entered the grand hall to see a colossal Buddha bathed in dusk light. Yet not a soul was in sight. Such a magnificent and vast temple could make anyone feel insignificant. But there was no one. From entering the temple gate until now, not a single person was encountered. Little Een speculated, "Could it be the monks in the temple heard about you and fled? Your relentless rampage always gives the impression that you won't rest until the skies change over Lingshui City." Duan Yun speculated too. "Do you think the evil monks of Dusk Temple are timid?" Little Een shook her head. It was her first time in Lingshui City, yet she'd heard tales of the evil monks of Dusk Temple early on her journey. At least in her impression, Dusk Temple was notorious, more fearsome than Axe Gang and Frost Blood Pavilion. And this empty temple alone felt quite oppressive to her. If buildings could speak, Dusk Temple would undoubtedly give more chills than Axe Gang and Frost Blood Pavilion. At least, her first time in Lingshui, just looking at the architecture, gave her a strong initial impact. No one here. Duan Yun continued deeper inside. Soon, his footsteps suddenly slowed, because he heard the sound of sweeping. Below the stone steps, under a tree of purple falling blossoms, an old monk carried a broom to sweep petals. He leisurely swept the ground, the flowers gathering at the broom tip, forming an inherent Zen air. He was the first person they saw after entering the temple. Duan Yun approached him and asked, "Where are the temple monks?" The old monk didn't lift his head, continuing his sweeping, answering casually, "They're gone." "Where did they go?" Duan Yun asked. "Wherever dusk is, that's where they go," the old monk replied. "Isn't there dusk here?" Duan Yun asked. "It's clearly dusk, and this is Dusk Temple. How could there be no dusk?" The old monk continued sweeping, saying, "The monks of Dusk Temple believe dusk has 4 seasons. This time, there's no dusk here, so they went elsewhere, like migratory birds." This statement was quite peculiar. Duan Yun asked, "Why didn't you go?" The old monk shook his head and said, "This humble monk is just a sweeper. Why chase the dusk?" From beginning to end, he never raised his head to look at Duan Yun. Yet his words carried subtlety. Even little Ian sensed a grandmaster aura. Duan Yun pondered aloud. "You mean to say you're the only person left in this temple?" The old monk flicked the broom and said, "When the temple is crowded, it's too noisy. Now, accompanied by the green light and Buddha, it's quite freeing." Duan Yun nodded and said, "Goodbye." If the temple was empty, there was no reason for him to stay. But just after taking 2 steps, Duan Yun's figure flickered, and he was behind the sweeping monk, saying, "Master, quit pretending." The old monk said, "Pretend what?" "Still pretending." Duan Yun pressed down on his head and said, "You don't seem simple, sweeping here so calmly, not even looking at me in the face. Aren't you an expert?" Indeed, this kind of expert might be Dusk Temple's hidden boss. Such a disguise technique cannot trick a traveler with extraordinary wisdom like me. Little Ian thought it made sense. "I am not," the old monk replied. "Damn it! You're forcing my hand." Beaming divine skill, the suction in his palm swirled, trying to extract the hidden true chi from the old man. "Once I've seen your memories. Let's see if you still pretend to be a hidden high master. You're alone here, so aren't you the hidden expert here?" Duan Yun interrogated. "I am just a sweeper," the old monk's face already blurred replied. "Still pretending. Then tell me, why don't you look at someone as handsome as me?" Duan Yun drained and asked. The old monk struggled and said, "I had a stiff neck last night, truly can't lift up, my lord." Just then, a fragment of memory flowed into his mind. The old man shivered suddenly. Duan Yun released his grip, stood there bewildered, saying, "He really is just a sweeper, and really had a stiff neck." The sweeping monk gasped for breath, his legs weakly trembling. A pained expression on his face said, "I already told you." "Then why do you sweep so meticulously and talk cryptically?" Duan Yun asked. "If the ground isn't swept properly, I get docked wages." What crypticity, speaking like this when sweeping at Dusk Temple, failing to say Zen-like things also gets docked wages. The sweeping monk explained. This time, Duan Yun didn't doubt anymore. Because just now, in the memory, he saw similar scenes where sweeping with some petal mud gets docked, eating without 3 light chews gets docked, speaking without Zen taste gets docked. Before them was essentially an old working beast exploited by capitalists. No, more like a rugged xiangzi. Duan Yun quickly apologized and said, "Take your time cleaning." "Oh right, when will the monks be back?" The sweeping monk answered, "Unsure, based on past practice. Approximately winter." Troubled. "Wait a moment." The sweeping monk startled again, saying, "What now?" "Don't move. I happen to be an obstetrician." With a slap, Duan Yun pushed with his hand, and with a cracking sound, the stiff neck of the sweeping monk suddenly relaxed. The monk joyfully twisted his neck and said, "Much more comfortable." Duan Yun and Little Een left. The fight didn't happen, unsure if the monks of Dusk Temple evaded disaster or Duan Yun. The young hero escaped a calamity. "Is everything all right?" Little Een, with a bit of teasing tone, asked. "Anything's safe for now, we'll only see when winter comes," Duan Yun said. According to the sweeping monk's saying, the evil monks of Dusk Temple don't travel in flocks, troublesome to find one by one. An extermination works like fighting large groups. Of course, the more gathered and dense the monster, the higher efficiency. Little Een gleefully stretched out and sighed. "Finally can have a good meal, take a good sleep." This didn't end up a fight, almost like early vacation. But at this moment, Duan Yun had mounted her again, saying, "Head to Wangchun City overnight." "Huh? Wangchun City?" Little Een squinted, feeling dazed. "Rest a little at Wangchun City. We need to head to Qinghe City overnight." "Qinghe City? Why?" Little Een immediately sensed the journey was extremely long. "I have friends there. They likely miss me," Duan Yun explained. Little Een said blankly, "What does that have to do with me? I want to rest." Duan Yun tugged her pigtails and scolded, "This short distance doesn't deserve a rest. Aren't you aware other mounts can travel 12 hours a day, every day for 30 days straight?" "Huh? Impossible." Still daring to backtalk. "Little Een, let me see where your limits are. Giddy up." Little Een swayed left and right, carrying Duan Yun forward. She looked at the sunset, always feeling it was her slipping youth. What defines bound to fail your life upon old demon encounter? Wangchun City, bustling as ever. Duan Yun and Little Een were eating noodles at a noodle stall, preparing to find a place to stay. Little Een repeatedly insisted she couldn't go on, forcing him to rest for the night. Alas, this mount stamina is still lacking. In the tea house, a storyteller was loudly proclaiming, "Everyone, bad news, bad news, earth-shattering bad news. Old Demon Duan is causing trouble in Yun State again." Upon hearing the news about Old Demon Duan, the disinterested audience suddenly became interested. "Wasn't he causing trouble in Qingzhou?" someone asked. Latest news, he's gone to Lingshui City, and the Axe Gang of Lingshui City has no backbone. After being gravely defeated by him, that so-called fire spirit evil god intends to personally kill his son, claiming he wants to establish a new hero town. Isn't that nonsense? Originally, Lingshui City wasn't under their sole control, talking about some hero town being established just like that. This matter should be discussed with Frost Blood Pavilion and Dusk Temple, but the earth-shattering bad news is, not long after Old Demon Duan brutally defeated the fire spirit evil god and his Dao Heart demon seed, insane enough to want to build a new hero town, he subsequently slaughtered Frost Blood Pavilion. What? Really? Hearing this, the crowd couldn't help but start discussing. I am a storyteller with first-hand information, guaranteed to be true. Pity those fairies, peacefully selling some blood watermelons and spreading a little fairy fate, which at most just makes people itch and die young, is no big deal. Yet they were brutally killed by Old Demon Duan. They were beaten into pieces, hands being hands, feet being feet, with the men who fancied their fairy fate also buried in the fire. The storyteller lamented with deep sorrow. "Messing around like this, won't Dusk Temple intervene?" someone asked. Dusk Temple is one of the top temples in Yun State, with profound Buddhism, most suitable for suppressing such evil demons. But sadly, the masters of Dusk Temple have all gone traveling, leaving Lingshui City unable to stop Old Demon Duan's evil plans. You tell me his so-called hero town where you can't kill, they say you can't even collect protection money, can it be a legitimate place? Poor Lingshui City, a piece of pure martial world, about to be defiled by Old Demon Duan. The storyteller slammed the table, complaining, "Ah, can't kill and no protection money, you got me interested." Someone muttered. The storyteller burst into anger, saying, "You worthless fool! Who in the martial world doesn't want to master martial arts, kill and collect silver?" Can you still call yourself a Jianghu person if you don't kill? Only someone as unambitious as you would think this way. But according to reliable information, our people saw old Demon Duan severely injured firsthand. He fought continuously for 2 days, and the Fairy of Frost Blood Pavilion even used frost blood poison on him. Now he probably has only half a breath left. I say we should conduct another demon-slaying conference. To replace the failure of the last one with victory, the storyteller rallied. His voice was loud and infectious, making many of the audience feel their blood boiling. At this time, the storyteller raised his voice. And also, old Demon Duan carries the martial god treasure stolen from Qingzhou. Whoever obtains it can master a body full of divine skill. So this is the best time to slay the demon. Miss it, and the chance is gone. This persuasion and temptation stirred up some reckless youngsters. However, there were still dissenters who said, "Old Duan? Cough cough. Severely injured. Then why don't you go?" The storyteller retorted angrily, "That's me giving everyone a chance." "Enough, you storytellers have said young hero Duan is severely injured many times in the past 2 years. Was there any time he wasn't? Isn't he still killing whoever he wants?" "Exactly. Such an excellent opportunity. Giving it to us?" The storyteller, seeing people sing a different tune like this, veins bulging on his forehead, said, "People like you are unworthy of living in the pure land of the martial world, unworthy of breathing its air. Someone, get this guy out of here." At this time, a big monk shouted angrily, "You lousy storyteller, who are you kicking out?" The storyteller originally wanted to curse, but upon seeing the big monk, he hesitated for a moment. Just seeing this monk bare-chested, revealing the tattoo of a one-eyed azure dragon. He then wore a silver mesh over his eye, making his eyes appear like salted duck eggs. It must be said, such a look is indeed bizarre and terrifying. Listen to the story if you want to listen. Why speak so much? The storyteller muttered, "Why speak so much? I am the one-eyed azure dragon monk of Taishui Temple. Once slayed the Red House evil woman with young hero Duan in Fenglin town. He's my big brother, who opposes my big brother establishing a new hero town." Saying this, the one-eyed azure dragon monk stood up, sweeping his veiled eyes over the crowd. His demeanor, appearing like Western women's undergarments tied over his eyes, was originally quite comical, yet no one dared to speak up for a moment. Duan Yun looked at this monk and realized he was indeed an acquaintance from before. Little Yin couldn't help but ask, "Is what he said true?" Duan Yun honestly replied, "Indeed true. A comrade who fought against the Red House girl." With the one-eyed azure dragon monk debating for him, the storyteller had nothing to say for the moment. The one-eyed azure dragon monk snorted, then sat down. Someone muttered "Old Demon Duan" not far away, and he immediately threw the person out, who fell screaming in pain. Soon, the waiter in the tea-house brought in new refreshments. The one-eyed azure dragon monk asked in confusion, "What's going on?" "A guest said you are sensible and spoke well, specifically treating you." "Who?" "A very handsome man, left riding a very beautiful maiden, looked quite extraordinary," the waiter explained.